Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm Bryan here with Randy and Andre. What's up, gentlemen? How are you today?
Doing well.
Good. So, guys, we got a jam-packed show. We got to get through it, I guess, somewhat quick, or we'll try to be quick. But got three jam-packed stories to talk about, that really fall in line with current events and what the heck is going on out there with cybersecurity. And just more evidence that the defenders out there and the people who are trying to keep the bad guys out aren't doing such a great job, because the people who are supposed to be watching the bad guys, the FBI, and we're going to start off with that story, just got their surveillance system hacked by China, guys, and they found out through the very vendor they trust to keep it secure. So we're going to start off with that, where this China hacked the FBI's wiretap system through a third-party vendor. And then we're going to dive into this story, guys, about a Massachusetts hospital that had to cancel chemotherapy and divert ambulances because of a cyber attack. And we're going to wrap up with a telehealth company with 2.5 million customers who got taken down by a single phone call. So if any of that hit close to home for you, maybe you used the service that we just talked about, or you are in that town in Massachusetts, or you're a concerned American who wonders how China is hacking our wiretapping system and what they're getting from that, stay tuned, because that's what we're going to talk about in this show today. So, guys, let's get into it. Let's start with the story that should embarrass every cybersecurity professional in the country, especially the ones that work for the government. The FBI, the agency that our government basically makes responsible for investigating cyber attacks, got its own surveillance system hacked by Chinese state-linked hackers. These wonderful people known as Salt Typhoon strike again. And the way they got in, guys, wasn't some zero-day exploit against hardened federal systems. They compromised a third-party vendor. It was actually a small ISP operating out of the U.S. Virgin Islands, of all places. And they had access to a system called DSCNet. Let me know when you want me to stop. So DSCNet, guys, that's the FBI's digital collection system network. And what that is the back end that manages court-authorized wiretap data, pen register logs, who the FBI is legally surveilling. So essentially, this system manages everybody who the FBI is watching. So the FBI detected anomalous activity on February 17th, notified Congress on March 4th, and the public knew about it on April 2nd. This has been classified as a FISMA major incident. That is the highest federal severity rating that you can get. So this isn't a minor blip. This is, quite frankly, the crown jewel of our FBI being hijacked by a nation state.
That's crazy. This is, again, not even something necessarily the FBI did wrong. It was their supply chain, right? And they looked for the small ISP, and they were able to then get in that way. Which ties into my article later on as well.
Yeah, because you have a vendor that has legitimate authorized access to one of the most sensitive law enforcement systems that our nation has. So go ahead, Randy.
Well, so I don't know. a week ago. Our news cycle moves so fast. It seems like 6 weeks ago, but I think, what was it, like a week or two ago, when the head of the FBI had his personal email hacked? Is this related? I mean, obviously, going after FBI, it falls under that umbrella. But are these two related in any way that you can see, Bryan?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, this is a vendor. The attack vector was trust. The parties involved, in 30% of all breaches are these third-party vendors. We know that. That's data, right? So, and that number is only growing, right? We keep warning on this show about companies needing to pay attention to their third-party risk, right? And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, Randy, where we are constantly tricking ourselves when it comes to who's responsible for security. A lot of companies and a lot of individuals, when they buy something, they believe that that purchase is absolving them of any risk. Either they think they're not going to get hit because they bought this thing, or they're buying this thing, so I'm transferring the liability from me to you. None of that is true. None of that exists. It's just what people believe when they purchase something, when they purchase managed services from companies like ours, our IT companies, right? They believe that when they purchase that they are transferring the risk of being hacked from them to you. When they buy cyber insurance, they believe they're transferring the risk of getting hacked from them to the insurance company. Oh, the insurance company will pay for it. None of that is accurate and true, but these are the things that business owners tell me when I have conversations with them. And I see it all the time now with just all this other stuff that's going on with AI and phones and social media. And like, people think that they buy something or they purchase something from Microsoft or Facebook. Oh, well, they're so big. They're Microsoft. They have to be taking care of my stuff. The FBI can't take care of your stuff. Microsoft certainly can.
Yeah.
I think this runs deep back, I would say 20 years, Bryan, where when we had cloud adoption and moving things to the cloud, and all the CEOs of all these companies, they needed the billions of dollars to flow into their industry. And so all they said all day long for years was, move to the cloud, it's safer. And so we have this whole mentality that if we move the server out of our office and move it into the office of the cloud company or whatever, that somehow it's more secure. And I run up against that almost at least weekly. I run up against that.
They're SOC 2 certified. They're SOC 2 certified. They do the security the right way because they have a SOC 2, so we don't need to worry about it. No, you do. Like, just because you move your stuff to Amazon doesn't mean Amazon's responsible for securing the data on that server. You are. And you need to have contingency plans if somebody breaks in through an Amazon backdoor that you don't even really have access to, right? How do you know that somebody on the system that you're renting from Amazon or Microsoft or Google or whoever, how do you know somebody's not running on their host servers on the back end, stealing your data, right? Well, there's ways you can figure that out if you have the proper tools in place. But if you just spin up a server, run it, and don't ever care about that, you run the risk of getting hacked that way through no fault of your own, right? Just because you picked that vendor and that vendor got hacked, right? Think about all those Kaseya people, right, guys, that were using Kaseya when they got hacked, right? I'm sure that wasn't a great feeling for all those MSPs when Kaseya got owned by hackers and they could do nothing about it because the software itself was compromised, right, that they chose to use. So you have to have contingency plans for these things. And if you don't prepare to this level, then you have massive risks that you're going to have to deal with at some point if some, unlikely event occurs. So here's a couple of things, guys, that I just want to dive into because we do need to kind of move through these topics quickly today. One of the things that bothers me most is, we have a situation where a foreign intelligence service has that information. They know who the FBI is watching, right? So they didn't just steal data. They compromised the identities of every person under FBI surveillance. So think about counterintelligence operations, criminal cases, national security investigations. And the same group, we have to remember this, it's important, also already hit AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and 8 other U.S. telecom companies.
Yep.
They've also intercepted calls from Donald Trump and J.D. Vance during the 2024 campaign. So this organization, Salt Typhoon, I mentioned them the way I did at the beginning of this conversation because this organization has unleashed a sustained, patient, strategic campaign against the United States government and communication infrastructure. And quite frankly, it's working.
I mean,
and if you know anything about Salt Typhoon, it's going right back to the Chinese government.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know that it's nation state backed. And we also know that whether they know backdoors or whether they're using equipment that was sold to these telecom companies that has backdoors written into the chips or whatever, we know this is something that they're consistently doing, is getting in through telecommunications companies. The thing to me reading this that's probably most disconcerting, yes, the people that are being surveilled, okay, so that's out there. But don't you think in that data, it also shows who's doing the surveilling as well? And couldn't that potentially out like people that are undercover, put them in danger? So now the Chinese know that an FBI agent is surveilling the, blah, blah, blah company. Well, he's undercover, in the middle of the mob or something. You know what I mean? Like his life or her life is at risk now.
Correct.
Potentially.
Correct. No, this could blow a lot of investigations out of the water or cause the FBI to have to rearrange a lot of things, which is probably why they took to over 2 months to kind of tell everybody what was going on, because they had to move pieces around and things like that before all of this, eventually, came out and things like that. So you're 100% right. So, last thing I'll leave CEOs with, if you think you've outsourced your risk, you probably haven't. And I guess the big thing is, if you think you've outsourced your risk without outsourcing the consequences, that's the big thing that I think a lot of people get wrong. Is like, just because you outsourced it and you think you outsourced it, you're going to learn that you didn't. And those are what you're going to learn is those consequences, and those consequences aren't going to be good. So you have to think about this stuff. You have to think about third-party risk. And, that's going to ring true as we move through the rest of these stories here. So I'm going to move into this Brockton Hospital cyber attack. I forgot to put my my images up, guys. You forgot to tell me. So we'll get into this. But it looks like it was yesterday. Is that right, Randy?
It was very recent.
Yep. It looks like Signature Healthcare's Brockton Hospital in Massachusetts got hit with a cyber attack. When you actually see that state's name on paper, it's harder to say than just saying it from memory. But anyway, the entire system went down. Ambulances were diverted to other hospitals. Chemotherapy appointments were canceled. Pharmacies had to close. Staff fell back to paper because no electronic health records, no digital access, no patient history. Modern systems were shut down. So I gave the summary, Randy. Give us the details. What's happening here?
Well, I mean, so this is cyber attack. We don't know a lot about exactly how they got in and exactly what is going on. It's just the fact that it happened, and they had to do things like cancel surgeries, send patients to other hospitals. They've shut down a ton of their systems, and the thing is, it's affecting service delivery. It's affecting also income receiving. And that, I know we talk about these things all the time because healthcare really seems to be under the gun right now. In fact, there's another breach literally going on as we speak in Massachusetts with the Patriot Regional. It's like an emergency notification or emergency, like they receive 911 calls and stuff like that. 911 calls aren't down, but a lot of their auxiliary services are down right now. And we've seen this whole industry, when it gets hit, it makes the news because it affects a lot of people. And it seems like the industry's under fire. I just think that it's more like they're big enough to make the news. But some things that really get me thinking about this, though, because we have a typical, maybe a business owner watching our podcast. I know we have some people in small government and government services that are watching the podcast, but this attack did things like it stops the hospital from operating, keeps money from coming in. Staff have to go to pen and paper. Like I read where they literally put our systems are down procedures in place where they're doing things with pen and paper. But basically it's affecting their workflow. And it makes me wonder, like a typical business, if they got in this situation where maybe they depended on computer systems for delivery of their product, what if that went down? What if they're depending on computer systems to receive their income, their money? What if that went down? And like I said, we don't know how they got in. Highly likely it's a phishing email. We know, upwards of 90% of all attacks start with a phishing email of some sort. Could have been a weak password. It appears this thing that's going on with the 911 services, highly likely that involves a weak password, although we don't know yet. But it's looking like it might be. But these are just basic little gaps that happen that are getting exploited. And then the other thing I wonder about in this situation, Bryan, and I'll wrap it up, is how much segmentation do they have? I know they were able to shut systems down, maybe out of caution. I know they have a pen and paper process that they're going to, but how segmented are they? How isolated are their systems? And I've got to ask that of, people that are in businesses and organizations, maybe even at hospitals that are watching this. How segmented are your systems? What it should be if there is an attack, because you're going to have one. So when there is an attack, so maybe it does bring down that one part for a certain amount of time. But are you going to be forced to bring down everything that you have because of one attack in one area? Or do you have things segmented? Do you have them isolated? And do you have a procedure and systems in place to basically contain it when it happens? And, I know I said I'll wrap up. One final thing, even if there's no ransomware involved, all this downtime and lack of income, I mean, that's just like a ransomware. That's probably more expensive. And then on the backside, having to go to court and, fight legal battles over people's data that's most likely out there and all that, another huge expense. Almost makes the ransom and the ransomware, the ransom for the ransomware almost makes that look like something tiny. So that's all I really want to say on that. What are y'all's thoughts on this?
I'm going to expand on the last part that you talked about, Randy, because that is, if you and I are going to a networking event and someone's asking us, hey, what do you do? You know, we do cybersecurity, system processes and IT, et cetera. Everyone's focusing on ransomware and data breaches and cyber attacks. But this example that we're talking about today is really what we should be talking about to our clients. Is like, you know, what happens if your business stops working for 24 to 72 hours? Do you have that plan? You know, and I would say that most managed service providers and IT companies are not talking to their clients about this. They're just talking about their client that we have this tool and we have this backup. But you know, we can all, everybody here, we can be doing the best things in the world and we can still have this. And even if it's not even our fault, as we're seeing with, you know, with the FBI article and in my article coming soon, it was not even anything that they did wrong. So what is that plan when there is some type of disruption in your business because of technology? And I think that's kind of what, that would be a great leeway of talking with, you know, future prospects, because that is probably something that no one's talking to them about.
Mm-hmm. More than likely not. I mean, that's a very good point, Andre. Andre, I'm gonna step into your shoes here for a minute, because I like to hit people with data and statistics, just like you do.
All right.
So the average cost to recover from a ransomware attack in healthcare, guys, is $2.5 million. The average downtime is about 20 days. That's actually gone down from like a month, so kudos to them for figuring this out. But here's one thing that's kind of, you know, people don't really see, because this is something that they got to figure out over a period of time. But when these events happen, in-hospital mortality rates go up 33%. Patients die at a higher rate when systems go down. So how long do you think before the lawyers who are involved in these lawsuits against these entities figure that information out and use it against them time and time again? When people, you know, suffer fatalities as a result of dying during a cyber attack.
Yeah, I mean, like Randy mentioned, they're on paper systems, plus the stress. You can't buzz your nurse. You ask your nurse a question and they're telling you, oh, I got to get back to you and stuff like that. Nobody needs that when you're in a hospital bed.
Right.
And we don't know the coverage in this area. If this is like the one regional hospital, often it's like that in rural areas. You don't have a choice, but there's always, if there's multiple choices and you get diverted to another hospital, that hospital might have also lost a customer forever and ever, you know, and not even figuring in lack of trust because their systems were down. They may end up going to a better hospital or a different hospital, and they're like, hey, I like this better. You know, I've always gone to XYZ. Now I'm going to go to ABC from now on. I don't know. Just another thought there.
Well, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, but a lot of, like we talked about on the show, like a lot of people don't have that luxury to go to another hospital, right? But if you do,
right,
like in my area, certainly, right? Certainly don't want to be doing business with somebody who has a repeated history of anything, right? So if a hospital around here does get a cyber attack, I don't know how willing I would be to go back to that hospital if I had other options, right? So it's a good point. And that translates across all businesses, right? And I try to, this is one of those conversations, Randy, that I have with business owners often, and they don't see how a cyber attack could lead to customers going elsewhere. Like they think that like customers don't make decisions like that. And that's a real thing. Like they think customers are just like, oh, well, they got cyber attack, they'll move on. And I think for some businesses, that's true. Some businesses definitely have been cyber attacked and people have continued to do business with them. Even like, I mean, I'm kind of that person who's like, if you're with an MSP who's been hacked before, shame on you if they, if something bad happens to you moving forward. Like, do you see it the same way? Do you see the same, have the same conversations that I have, that business owners just think that like, even if we get hacked, the world will continue to buy from us?
We had one CEO tell us if we got hacked, we would just change our name. And maybe they'll do that, but these guys have a multi-million-dollar facility in a highly visible place. So what are they going to do? Just rip all their branding off their building and pop up a new branding? And are people going to find you when you just do that? Like, we're all small business owners. You wouldn't be a small business owner if you weren't good at sticking your head in the sand and ignoring all the signals that are telling you you can't make it, right? We just shoulder forward and we make it happen. That's both a strength because we can get it done and we can get businesses started. It can also be a weakness where we hear something like, hey, a cyber attack could shut your business down. We're so good at sticking our head in the sand. We just stick our head in the sand on that one and just shoulder forward and say things like, oh, I'll just start with a new name. We literally worked with a company one time that came to us and they said they were hacked. And so they changed their name. They changed everything, blah, blah, blah. They found out when they got to the new name and all that, they were still hacked because they never got the guy out or the bad guys out in the first place. So just some thoughts there. Kind of got me started there for a second, Brian.
My bad. Andre?
It's always cheaper to secure than to wait for these scenarios to happen. So we'll see. I'm sure Randy will update us when they find 2 years later when they tell us what really happened. But it's still not good for business. Nevertheless, obviously, a hospital. If you got to go to that hospital, you have no choice. We talked about Salt Typhoon and all the major carriers, T-Mobile, Verizon, all of them got hacked. Yep. So some stuff you're still always going to have to use them, but for some other things, you're going to protest with your dollars.
Well, I don't know when healthcare organizations are going to learn, guys, but they keep delaying the security investment, and unfortunately, the ones that do are paying the price. So they got to figure it out. So going right along with more healthcare good news, Andre, I want to highlight your topic that you brought to the table in the green room, which was Hims and Hers, a very popular telehealth company. I'm sure you've seen the ads for them. They sell prescription and treatment plans for things like erectile dysfunction, hair loss, weight loss drugs, and mental health. I'm sure if you watch YouTube videos and YouTube channels, you've heard almost the same exact commercial read to you by people who are sponsored by them. So they have 2.5 million subscribers. So no small company here, Andre. What happened?
Yeah, so we have a scenario where we're talking about Hims and Hers, but it wasn't necessarily the company itself. So it seems that they have a ticket system. So if you were to contact them to say, hey, I have a question about this, or, I'm still waiting for my meds, or, customer service type of stuff, it seems that the attackers tricked the employees into giving access to the system. So attackers didn't do some sophisticated China, thing. Nope, they just used a little GPT, found out a persuasive way to let someone in literally through the front door. So, of course, they're coming out saying, hey, nothing to see here. We don't believe, quote unquote, believe that any medical records were directly compromised. And even if that is true, let's just say their prescriptions and stuff like that are on a different system or on a more secure system, and the ticket system is more of customer interactions. But if you say, hey, I didn't get my hair loss medicine, and it shows their name and shows their email address, well, bad guys are going to go ahead and create a new Hims domain, and they're going to say, hey, Jerry, we got, or Andre, since I have no hair, hey, Andre, your hair prescription medication is about to expire. We have a buy one, get one free. Click here and, give us your information or remind us of your information. So even though they're downplaying it, it's still a major problem for them. And this just again shows that, your vendors equals your risk. Just going back to what you were saying, Bryan, just because I'm not going to name, we don't know what ticket system it was, but just because you use a third-party company for this system or this software, that doesn't mean that, okay, they're taking everything. Oh, they're Microsoft. They must be doing everything right. It doesn't matter, as we see in this case.
Just kind of on a little side note, we can bring it back. This kind of also makes a good case for if you're watching the show as a small business owner, even in government, you have the ability. I know we do in Texas, but this makes the case for having cybersecurity insurance, because you may not be able to remove the fact that you need someone else to do your business. You may have to have third-party access. Yes, you need to vet them and all that jazz. But at the end of the day, you ought to have a policy that covers you in case something goes bad. And this would be a perfect, opportunity for that. I realize this is a lot bigger company. I don't know if they have it or don't have it or whatever, or what's going to happen. But just a little side note for like a small, medium-sized business or even a government agency watching the show, a city or something like that. It's a good place to have cybersecurity insurance. A good reason for it.
Yeah, I agree. So, Shiny Hunters, been around for a while, guys. Huge track record. Let me see here. They hit Ticketmaster in the same manner with these phone calls, right? That's how they like to get in. 560 million records. AT&T, 73 million records. Mano, 38 million records. And now 2.5 million records from Hims and Hers. So they got a lot of information on a lot of people.
Yeah, they do.
So I will tell you that this group is not slowing down. They're not stopping. They're not getting less effective. The common thread isn't a technical vulnerability. It's social engineering that bypasses whatever technical controls are in place. Not saying that the best technical controls are in place in these situations. What we're saying here is these companies have some technical controls, but these shiny hunters guys have figured out ways around the common things that you guys are putting in place. So it's time to put other things in place, right? When certain things don't work anymore, it's time to look at what's going on the battlefield and say, hey, we're getting hit with these drones and our missiles aren't working. Maybe we need to come up with something else to defend against this. That's the name of the game, right? That's how it works. Sorry about that, guys. Thought my phone was on mute. One other thing I want to point out as a result of these breaches, guys, if your organization uses these make you feel good login tools like Okta, Microsoft Entra, some other SSO platform like Google, Azure, or whatever, go talk to your IT people who are running that system and look at your credential reset and verification procedures today, not down the road, because these guys are exploiting this stuff. They know that you don't have your reset and verification procedures set up correctly. You don't have separation of duties in place correctly. And these guys are taking advantage of that. And that's what you need to work on. And a lot of businesses need to get better at. So any other thoughts there, guys?
Last thing, test your employees. Have someone from your office have someone use their personal cell phone and just say, hey, this is the IT support desk. I need to get into your computer. Go logmein.com for me, or, Quick Assist or something like that, and see if they fall for it. Because that's literally how easy it is sometimes to get into these systems. And it's more not to get the employee in trouble or anything like that, but it's education. And then bring it up in a team meeting and say, hey, we tested, we called 5 people and, and out of that, we called the office to try to trick people. And out of that, 5 people fell for it. guys, we got to be careful for this, and then use the him and hers as an example.
All right, guys, 3 different industries, 3 completely different types of attacks, but one common thread. The attacker or attackers found the path of least resistance, and in every case that path ran through a single person or a single third party or a point of failure that wasn't prepared for what they were getting hit with. These are not sophisticated espionage stories that only apply to governments, right? These other 2 stories outside of the FBI one, we're talking about Fortune 500 companies, yes, but these exact same patterns are playing out in small businesses, medium-sized businesses right now, everywhere, in businesses just like yours. So if you don't think this stuff can happen to you and it's only happening to the big guys, well, it's like we always said in the past, Andre, you're just too small to make the news, right? These big guys make the news because they're big. If your company was as big as theirs, you would make the news too.
Yep.
But there are websites out there. There's dark websites, leak sites. There's surface websites on the real web that aggregate what's on the dark web and bring that stuff to the surface. There's websites out there today that list companies beyond companies that are dealing with these types of attacks, and they're all very small companies. It doesn't matter. The organizations that will survive these attackers are the ones that decide in advance to watch podcasts and listen to guys like me, Randy, and Andre, and be ready, not after the breach, but before it. So if any of these stories hit close to home, I hope at least one of them did. We invite you to head over to buymeacoffee.com/security squawk. You can donate any amount there. It keeps advertisers and sponsors away from this particular show. We give you resources, and on securitysquawk.com and here on YouTube or wherever you watch us on Facebook, we've got all our past episodes for the last 5 years and easy ways to connect with us directly if you want to talk about what your organization should be doing. So if you're getting value from the 3 of us or this show, please subscribe, share it out wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever that is for you. Leave us a review. It genuinely helps more business leaders find this show and get the information that they need. We'll be back next week with 3 more stories that you need to hear to help you protect you and your business from these cyber criminals. I'm Bryan with Andre and Randy. We will see you next week. Stay safe, stay secure.
Bye, everybody.